For those who haven't seen it for a while, GC, same name as Chaz's dog. Clearly that was an homage, Chaz.
You just love Meet the Parents. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Chaz Fisher.
And I'm Stu Willis.
And welcome to Draft Zero, a podcast where two emerging filmmakers try to work out what makes great screenplays work. And as with our previous episode, we have one established filmmaker to help lead us on this journey.
Welcome back, Kim, to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
I mean, you haven't left. This is still the This is part two of our... I mean, it's two parts, so it's not even a series. Part two of our episodes on escalating antagonism. The first one, we broke down Sinners and its relationship to the Tombs cycle, Transgressions, Omens, Manifestation, Banishment, and Slumber. And the idea is it's a cycle. And we also brought up a related idea also from the Mothership TTRPG, which is save, survive, solve, which are goals for your characters. And in Mothership, you're meant to give characters the options of doing all three, but they'll often be put in a situation where they could only do two or one of them, and they have to make some hard decisions.
And in this particular episode, we're moving out of the horror arena, away from Mothership, away from Sinners, into two genres expressly requested by our Patreons to further find out how we can generate antagonism and thus generate story fuel. How can we power that middle of our story through escalating antagonism? And we are looking today at Rebel Ridge, written and directed by Jeremy Saulnier, and Meet the Parents, story by Greg Gliena and Mary Ruth, screenplay by Jim Herzfeld and John Hamburg.
Just before we go into Rebel Ridge, I think one of the interesting things that struck me in our analysis was that we had there were two sources of antagonism in Sinners. One, which was the Ku Klux Klan, which is the Ku Klux Klan, and the other source being the vampires, which are a hive mind. And as a complete aside, it actually struck me that there was an interesting article from Cory Doctorow, the sci-fi writer and futurist, talking about how the Ku Klux Klan is actually a pyramid scheme historically, right? And I'm like, so they're actually really connected to the hive mind pyramid scheme of the vampires. Anyway, so I think that's just something that as we go into Rebel Ridge, it's going to be interesting to look at whether Tombs also applies with multiple sources of antagonism in this film or not. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, look, if anyone hasn't listened to the past episode, you should probably go back and listen to it, because we really break down what the Tomb cycle is, how it can generate story, how it maps imperfectly. And so it's like really mapping the escalating sources of antagonism very separately from the classic protagonist journey and act breaks and those kind of paradigms. So if you haven't listened to that previous episode, probably best to go back to listen to it before we continue our exploration and application of Tombs in Rebel Ridge and Meet the Parents.
Anyway, let's continue our journey with the opening journey of Rebel Ridge when we find our main character on a push bike.
I need to report a crime.
And this was cash?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can you describe the suspect?
Big guy, must weigh 250.
We're gonna hold on to this money.
I didn't get his badge number, but his last name's Marston.
You're gonna need to leave.
Main suspect number 2.
Hey, Mike! Post him down! Stay low, all right?
You can fight for the money, but that'll take you most of a year and cost you twice what you're owed.
And it's legal?
It's law.
May I at least see my cousin?
You can fuck right
I
off.
would love to, sir, just as soon as I get my money back.
You do not stand in my station in front of my officers and set terms. You need to be very, very careful.
Let's not do that.
Chief!
What are we looking at?
Oh.
I think he's Marine Corps Martial Arts MCMAP. One mind, any weapon.
Whatever you decide to do, you do it damn far from here. You enter this town again, so go another route.
Rebel Ridge opens with Terry Richmond as he's cycling on a push bike listening to Iron Maiden with his headphones on. It's a great use of diegetic sound because he can't hear the police car behind him with the sirens on, who then bumps into him, to knock him off a bike. A kind of version of the pit maneuver, which they do at the end, which is where you use the car to kind of spin a vehicle out of control. They basically find him to have $36,000 in cash. He tries to be as honest as possible, but they decide that they're going to seize the cash via civil forfeiture because they believe it's involved in trafficking.
It's called civil asset forfeiture.
And it's legal?
Well, it's a law. It's supposed to help feds fight cartels.
Right, well, they didn't find any drugs, so.
All they need is suspicion, because the seizure isn't tied to any criminal charges. And here's where it gets real murky. Chief gets to keep the proceeds. He needs it for discretionary funds, whatever that means. Someone in permits told me he bought a $900 margarita machine for Cinco de Mayo.
Right, so never mind the share what you remember this due process.
Doesn't matter. It's the 5th and 14th. But when they bring this case, you won't even be named. It's literally gonna read, how much money was it again?
$36K.
It'll read the township of Shelby Springs versus $36,000 because your property has no civil rights.
Okay, but you can help me get it back.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, yes, you can fight for the money, but that'll take you most of a year and cost you twice what you're owed.
Terry's already given them the reason that he wants the money, which is it's for bail for his brother.
Cousin.
That's an important distinction because someone else also says it's his brother. And he's like, no, it's my cousin. And he basically needs to kind of, the first part of the film is him trying to get the money to get his brother out on bail because as it turns out, his cousin would be in kind of peril because he informed on a gangster, right? That he's basically probably going to get shivved in prison. The long story short is he is targeted by the police. They find him with money, shake him down, take it. His cousin ends up being killed as he warned them. The police realize they fucked up, throw him out of town, but he's brought back into town. Things go from bad to worse, and he tries to extract revenge against the corrupt police officers.
I mean, in that very, very short summary, you're missing that he is like John Rambo. Like he's a superstar in hand-to-hand combat, in particular in unarmed combat, and so the police of this town have fucked with the wrong guy.
Marine Corps Martial Arts Program.
What?
MCMAP. Combat system combines hand-to-hand, close quarters. Oh. I think he's on the Wikipedia page. Teaching jiu-jitsu to the 6th Marine Regiment.
Okay.
It's team building. One mind, any weapon.
Call in any units on patrol.
Yep.
Like he is capable and proves that he's capable of taking down an entire armed police force without using a single gun.
That sequence is so good when they're like, McMap.
Mm.
He was in the army, but he was never posted.
He never went to Afghanistan or Iraq. Don Johnson literally says, like, my heart damn near skipped a beat. Like, that's the omen for him is like the McMaps thing or the
they've got the annoying setup.
They're rebooting the Wi-Fi.
No Wi-Fi up yet?
It's coming.
As she's Googling it, and then they have the, oh shit, McMap stands for Marine Corps Martial Arts Program, just as the situation escalates for him to have to use the power. So,
but we've got two competing forces here. We've got the corrupt police force, and then we've got Terry's abilities, really. And they are in clear antagonism to each other because Stu, you sent a message on the Discord saying, Terry's the monster in this. Like, Terry's the source of antagonism. Like, he's not. But all of Tombs will map equally onto Terry's escalation as it will map onto the police's escalation in this.
It's really great to see on the poster. The tagline is their laws, his rules. And it's just this very clear distillation of like the transgressions go both ways.
Yeah.
And I think this is useful. We've talked about it before. Not that everyone is into writing log lines as a development tool, but I often find it useful to write a log line from the perspective of different characters, particularly the primary antagonist. And actually, we're working on some casting stuff, Chaz and I, at the moment, and we've actually rewritten the synopsis centered on the character of every cast.
Oh my God.
Particularly the villain. And it's such a good, like, way of rigor testing this. And so I love the idea that Toombs, when I watched this and went, well, of course, because in an action movie, because what we haven't tapped into, we've talked about the horror and the monster, but what does that mean, right, as a source of antagonism? Not every movie is going to have an antagonist that you could describe as the monster or the horror, right? And we're talking about something which is of incredible power, right? We did a whole series on antagonism, and we talked about things about does the source of antagonism have agency or not? Does it make decisions or not? Can you negotiate with it or not? Right? And you can't negotiate with a xenomorph, right? You can't negotiate with the predator, but the predator has needs. The predator is different to the storm, right? And it's possibly a little bit different to the shark in Jaws. The shark in Jaws is probably a little bit closer to the storm, but it's not a random thing, right? These things exist in a spectrum. And, Rennick has got a need in Sinners that he's trying to fulfill. And you can't really negotiate with Rennick, right? You can kind of say, like, you can satisfy his hunger, but that's not a negotiation. And I think what's interesting about Rebel Ridge is Terry does try to negotiate and strike a deal with Chief Sandy Byrne, the character that the chief of police of the town's police, played by Don Johnson. And Don Johnson rejects that because he basically says feels like he's not someone you negotiate with because it belittles him.
This is a perfect example of the Toombs thing, because I think that deal that you're talking about is Terry's transgression that awakes the manifestation of evil that is these corrupt cops. He has the audacity to come into that police station, to report the cops as having robbed him, and then offer a deal.
To offer the deal, yeah.
There's a great line from Don Johnson later where he says, the deal was fair. The issue is that you felt that you were allowed to offer it. He tells him that he has transgressed against the rules of the laws or the rules of this system of this world.
It's about power, yeah.
Like, the transgression against Terry is very obvious. It happens in the first 30 seconds of the film. It's the cops running him off the road and then stealing his money. And then there is a clear Omens sequence, which is Terry just trying to find out whether what's happened to him is legal or not and what he can do about trying to fix the situation. And there's almost like this wonderful sort of Kafkaesque unraveling of how this civil forfeiture works, as explained to him by Summer.
So that's the mystery to solve. One, what it is they're doing, and then the larger corruption.
Yeah. Well, the mystery that solved definitely escalates, because there's the initial mystery, and it's almost on a per sequence basis, but it's like the initial mystery is like, are they allowed to get away with it? And the answer, it gets resolved at the first act of yes, there's actually nothing he can do legally within the system to get his money back and to get his cousin out of jail. And then there's the beginnings of the manifestation, both on Terry's side and on Don Johnson's side. And then the cops actually, unfortunately, Terry's cousin dies. And that there is a point in the middle of the movie where Terry could let everything go. And he gets pulled back in because they try to frame Summer.
The clerk? She a clerk?
Like 6 cases away from JD.
Yeah.
I'm working.
Hey, look, I'm sorry. It's just these cops are fucking with me.
Yeah, they're saying the same thing about you.
They're transferring him. He's on the bus right now.
Sorry to hear that.
You said you could help.
And that's when there's a new mystery posed, because they're trying to figure out why is it that the cops are doing, like the scale of the conspiracy opens up, and Terry goes, they're doing this for a reason. Why have they offered me this out?
So this structure is really interesting because we talk about it then being both ways, but in some ways, and I've seen this pattern before, is this is almost like Tom Toombs.
Oh, God.
Yeah, totally.
As in the midpoint, they succeed in banishing him.
Yeah.
But then they transgress by going after his friend, and thus he comes back and then it escalates. And I say I've seen this structure before because I went away with some of my friends on the weekend and I watched 3 canon 1980s action movies. I watched American Ninja 1, American Ninja 2, and Avenging Force. And they are all very similar to this, which is basically the bad guys seem to be the monsters until the middle of the film or so. And then it turns out the actual monster is the action hero that they've awakened who's going to absolutely fuck them up.
Yeah.
Right? And it's kind of an interesting flip because you could, if you remade Rebel Ridge, I can't believe it's just what we're talking about. Like if it was like the Predator on a bike knocking over and then you're like, oh, like you could tell this story from the cops' point of view and about them being picked off one by one.
Well, I had a reading of this that was like the horror for me wasn't so much like these cops that are corrupt or that have chosen to be corrupt out of greed. That like, I'm not saying that anything they do is justified, but it was really interesting that detail that, you know, when they finally unravel the mystery, the town is essentially bankrupt because of the civil case that happened 2 years prior, and they are exploiting civil forfeiture legislation in order to like wrongly imprison a whole bunch of people, get cash from the people who try and bring cash into town to post those people's bail, and use that money to go back into the communities.
What's on Mike's video? What they do to him?
Enough to get us sued.
You seen it?
No.
Let me guess. You don't want to fucking know.
Wouldn't matter if I did. Lose another lawsuit and it's disincorporation. Shelby Springs disappears, swallowed up by the parish. Y'all gonna leave me like this?
Alive? Yeah, for now.
You knew Judy. What would she think about all this? What you're doing to me?
Well, she knew what you did. She'd want to watch.
So like in the cops' point of view, what they're doing is like making the best of a shitty situation. And I think Rebel Ridge does a really good job of like showing these systems of power and oppression, like the legislation of civil forfeiture breeds corruption. It enables and facilitates corruption, as opposed to the corruption being like, you know, these few bad eggs, or bad apples or whatever, rotten apples in this town. It's like this nationwide rot that humans are caught up in on both sides of the law, or on all of these different factions.
The system is designed to do this, right? This is kind of the looser effect, if you know about it. It's the system is actually designed to create this kind of behavior, and then the system can deny it, which is kind of the Lucifer effect, is kind of some of the stuff that happened at Abu Ghraib, in the way that the military was like, no, that's the bad apples. And then the psychologist who was involved with it, he ran the Stanford experiment, and all of his career since then is being like, holy shit, I ran the Stanford experiment. I need to make up and work out what the fuck happened. And he talks about there being systems that are designed to create this kind of abhorrent behavior because it benefits the system, but allows the system to then divorce themselves from that behavior and be like, well, that wasn't us. And you are right. And I think what is great about this in terms of the manifestation and the mystery, it is the Omens build so well that when you get to that point when you're like, oh, this isn't just some corrupt cops like we thought in Act 1, like in the opening scene when they knocked him off. This is literally the whole town surviving on blood money.
Yeah. And I think, Stu, to your point about this being Tom Toombs, I think this film more classically maps, you could see Transgression as being the opening of the film, Omens being the rest of the first act, the whole second act being Manifestation, and then the final act being Banishment, and then ending with just a shot of Slumber. Right? Well, it's more than a shot. It's when on the highway, when they learn that they're being escorted, not chased, and there is Slumber there. So I think,
and it's interesting because there is this question of like, have the cops just turned on their captain? So the end of the film, if you haven't seen it, is the captain shoots this cop which they codenamed Serpico, he's not a double agent. He's still corrupt. He's just feeding.
He's the one who runs him off the bike at the beginning.
And I love that. I love that he's kind of the good guy, but not really. Right. But I think it gets into the complexities of those things, right?
Definitely.
I don't think it's condemning his behavior. I don't think it's presenting him as a hero. It's a little bit more neutral in terms of he's obviously uncomfortable with what's going on, but he's still participating in it.
I didn't love the kind of cop redemption arcs we got towards the end of that film, but I do think that that's what made me feel like this film was not saying the antagonists of these 4 cops or however many. It was like this system that twists.
Yes.
They made a really big deal out of most of these cops are fathers of kids. That they've got families. They're just like us.
Yeah.
Is she hurt?
Nothing I can tell, no.
Where are they taking her?
I don't know. Look, man, we're not all like... I'm married. Okay, hey. I got a kid, so...
Yeah. So does she. So let's not waste any fucking time.
But it's really trying to, regardless of whether you agree with that politic, saying that these are human beings caught up in this corrupt system.
But what I was going to say, and I fully agree with that, by the way, I think each sequence runs through its own tomb cycle. I think each sequence culminates in a banishment and a slumber, and then the next sequence starts with a new transgression, right? So even just at the beginning, so the culmination of Terry goes in and reports the cops to themselves, and he is literally told to fuck off, right?
Yeah, we'll follow up on this. Don't exactly have visiting hours around here, but if you come back here at 9 a.m. on Monday morning, you can see your cousin, and we'll put this to bed.
Thank you.
Now fuck off.
And he leaves, and he goes and catches a fish and has a little cookout, and he knows that if he arrives at 9 a.m. the next morning, he's going to get to see his cousin, and they're going to do the deal. And then the transgression is that the chief has fucked him over, right? And so there's another transgression, and then there's more omens, and that culminates in the overall manifestation, the shit-eating grin scene, is when Terry understands how corrupt this cop is, that there is going to be nothing he can do. And he even talks about the acronym of PACE, of all the tactics that he can do. And he's run through all of them, and he's now on the last one. And it's also that wonderful McMap revelation when the cops understand the manifestation of Terry.
I see.
Do you? Because the offer you made wasn't unreasonable. In fact, it was more than fair as far as the trouble it would save.
Well, it still stands.
So you don't see. Wasn't the offer you made. The fact that you thought you were entitled to make one.
Well, my intentions weren't
straight to hell with your intentions. You do not stand in my station in front of my officers and set terms.
Well, I wasn't aware it was a pissing contest.
Come on now. Isn't it always?
So whatever I say, my cousin...
You could offer me eternal life or a catfish sandwich, and the answer would still be the same. Especially since you stopped calling me sir, which is about the only thing you had going for you.
Well, see, that's a courtesy I extend only so far.
Right? And I'm all still at the first act turning point. But then we've got a whole other sequence, multiple sequences in the midpoint, which end in a banishment. Stu, you talked about the de-escalation where Terry is literally, he's left, right? He has been banished. His cousin said he's clean. He's away free, right? But then the cops transgress by trying to fake Summer's, by overdosing Summer. And so he's brought back in. And so I think in this film, more classically, you can actually see not only the overall escalation, Toombs applying overall to the film to both Terry as an antagonist to these cops and the system of corruption against Terry, but then also within each sequence, there is this escalation and cycle.
If the cops didn't shake down his friend, who gave him the money in the first place, right? This Chinese restaurant, because he rings him up again and goes, I need another $10,000. And the guy's like, I can't.
Yeah.
Right? Because the cops have just turned up and seized a bunch of the cash in the safe. If they hadn't done that, again, none of this would have happened.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a really good analysis. It is actually a really good structural tool, right? Go tombs for each sequence, and then you go, who is now transgressing to wake the someone, and it gives you that kind of positive, negative, alternate contrast thing with this. But character A is now slumbering, but character B now has transgressed.
Yeah.
But then now maybe they're the one who's slumbered, and then the other person transgresses, right? And that's what makes this film have such a riveting push-pull to it. And I think the other thing it does, coming back to this, the solve, survive, and save, is at the beginning he wants to save his brother, right? The solve, the mystery is why are the cops stealing with his money? Like that we learn, like we don't know it's a mystery until it's kind of becomes clear that it's systematic. And then once his brother's dead, the save is transferred onto Summer. That's the very reason he's brought back, right? That they've kind of misjudged that he has affection for her. They thought she was alone, and they're trying to get her off because she's the one who's close to uncovering the mystery.
Yeah.
Right? And then the solve is, how do we actually banish these cops?
Yeah.
Like, what information do we need? And then they work it out. The part of the conspiracy is the body cam footage, that the reason they've been holding these people for the 90 days or whatever it is so basically there's an expiry on the body cam footage as evidence, and it gets wiped. Right? And that's why they've been holding these people, and they kick them down to whatever it is in the American court system so they don't have to go to, it's all that kind of fucking of the system that people can exploit. So I think what's interesting is how those two things kind of work together in this. And you get that sense of power. And as we said, they're both monsters for each other, right? You've kind of got the army of the cops. And when he agrees to meet them at Rebel Ridge, it takes its time showing how many people have turned up. And you're like, oh, right?
But, I mean, let's talk about that moment, because that's the transition from, classically, the low point of the film. Summer's been taken by the police, and the mystery has been resolved. And then it's about, we're coming up into the big interaction between Terry and the police, right? And there's deliberately a slumber, right? Terry says, I'll see you at dawn. Like, he's got that badass speech about, I'll see you coming, and maybe if you're lucky, you'll see me.
Fuck it, first light.
How about right now? I gotta see what's waiting for me. Works out well for you too.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. You just might see me coming.
Right? They deliberately take their foot off the gas and have a pause, right? And then before he acts, he calls the chief with that, again, another series of like, this is like almost classic 80s Stallone or Schwarzenegger dialogue, but Aaron Pierre just fucking nails it, and Jeremy Saulnier writes the shit out of it. But that phone call where he's like, you know how you're talking about de-escalation?
Yeah, it's gotten out of hand. Real soup sandwich.
We can agree on that.
Got me thinking about that conversation we had in the cruiser about de-escalation. That also takes both sides, So I was thinking, what if we just walk away?
Well, now you're starting to talk.
But then I was like, nah.
And then I thought, nah. And then he just pulls the wall off the cop shop. So that's him transgressing. There's been a slumber. There's been banishment. And he is committing the transgression of, he's calling him up and telling him, we could de-escalate this. We could solve this through the negotiation. And then I thought, nah.
So good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just like, I really like this movie, like probably right up until the end. I felt like, going off topic a little bit, but the like the repeat beat of drugging Summer again felt like gratuitous, and maybe like a bit damsel in distressy, and this notion of like having one of the good apples turning. But yeah, I think what struck me as like throughout the movie, they do such a good job of like portraying power, but not necessarily directly and actively. Like the first time Terry and Summer meet, they go into a diner and she gets a drink, and then they're talking about civil forfeiture legislation. A cop walks in, Anna Sophia Robb, Summer goes quiet, and then goes, let's leave. And they just they have to exit the diner in order to continue their conversation. It's just this very, very short, small thing. And then later in the it happens multiple times, but like cop cars following behind, and then maybe like once they cross the bridge to go out of town, the cop car turns around. It's later revealed that that is Serpico or whoever, like, you know, their ally. But just like a cop car with no face attached to it is so ominous in this world. Yeah, they do a great job of like almost having these like sentient creatures lurking about.
And Terry's transgression is to not be afraid of them.
Having the audacity to be a martial arts badass.
Yeah. But he's not just he knows that he's physically in control of the situation. He's also intellectually, he's in control of his emotions nearly at all points. There's 2 points, and I think they're really important, where he actually shows his emotions. Actually, I'm going to say 3. The first one is when the police chief has just fucked him over, reneged on the deal, and Terry rides his push bike after the prison bus so that he can talk to his cousin and tell him his plan. And then, because the bus is heavily geared and the bus driver has seen him coming and is trying to like drive away, Terry, in this sign of like physical triumph, has everyone cheering him on, as on his push bike he overtakes the bus. And the only reason he's doing that is to show this bus driver that he is more powerful, that he is not afraid. You know, it's this moment of triumphalism that he is not supposed to experience. The other moment of emotion is clearly when his cousin has died. But then the final moment when he pulls that wall off the cop shop after the thing, where he's just like screaming, like he's just letting the adrenaline out.
All units, be advised.
And those are the only moments where like he's letting his body and his emotions out, but it feels like he knows that he's doing that and he's allowing himself to do that, and they're supporting his objective. Totally. So he's not just a physical threat. He's,
It's so interesting that I was thinking about like restraint and self-control in the context of like survival for this movie. Like even just from the first 30 seconds, you know, he starts to try and get up and the cops are going belly on the ground. Is like, you've got to restrain yourself, you know, as a black man being apprehended by police. Like self-control is survival, and it requires this like superhuman, profoundly unreasonable, profoundly unfair degree of self-control, which Terry is like the one person who actually does have that because of his discipline and training.
But he's still punished.
Totally.
Regardless.
Totally.
And he runs through all his options until he's like, now I've just got to fuck you guys all up because self-restraint is not serving me.
But he still doesn't kill anyone.
Yeah.
Like he
maims a few people.
Yeah, it's true.
But what is interesting is it's such a contrast to the police, right? They shoot in order to exert control. He breaks arms.
Yeah.
Right? Like he does the minimum amount of violence necessary in order to take control of the situation. They let it escalate it. And coming back to Kim thing, we may cut this from the video, but when I've taught screenwriting before and I talk about given circumstances, my now wife, she enjoys watching police interrogation videos because she is a psychologist. And there's this video that I now use in screenwriting class, which is comparing two innocent people being interrogated by the cops. One is black, one is white. The emotional control that the black man constantly exerts is incredible in contrast to the white guy who's like, I didn't fucking do that. Blah, 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 blah. Both innocent, right? It's just that you can tell, for me, and I obviously have incredible white privilege and like male white privilege here. But it's just, it does remind you of Terry, that you can see this guy having to calmly explain this to this cop, all the facts. He ended up getting awarded a huge amount of sum for wrongful arrest, right? But it's just such a striking difference in given circumstances, changing the kind of tactics that people, I'm doing it in very clinical terms rather than socio-political ones, but the kind of tactics that people have to choose, right? And the thing is, in this story, their transgression, the monster they have woken is that they've got someone who actually is capable of defeating them, right? Or, you know, I think the ending is interesting because on this watch, right, they don't spend a lot of time doing it, but I think when Chief Sandy shoots, quote unquote, Serpico, who Ed,
right from The Office,
yes, right, great casting. When he shoots him, you can see everyone except like the other really, really bad cop all be a little bit like, what the fuck? Right? Because they realize that he is willing to kill them in order to get what they want. So I think they kind of turn against him out of self-preservation more than they are protecting Terry. Right?
And my view of the escort was it was more to escort Ed to hospital than...
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you, Kim, in that they're trying to redeem some of these very corrupt cops who've done heinous things. But I also agree that they have gone great lengths in the storytelling to say that these cops are in a situation where corruption is the only way they can exist in terms of protecting their community. And the line that gets drawn for them at the end is some of these cops are okay with that. They've got different lines of corruption that they're willing to pass, and they're all individually confronted with that, you know.
The slumber in Rebel Ridge is so interesting to me precisely because of that. Because you've got kind of narrative questions of like, is Summer going to be okay? Is fucking Roy from The Office going to be okay? Is he going to pull through?
Terry's going to be in jail for the rest of his life. It doesn't matter that he's got the dash cam tied to him.
Totally.
Like, some cops are going to come to take that dash cam off him and smash it to pieces, and then he will...
He's broken so many laws that like there's no way he's getting out of this. And just like more widely, the like socio-political, economic legislation that allows not only for civil forfeiture, but like allowed this small town to get so like unsupported by state and federal governments. Like the fact that the water isn't safe to drink here, that the horror, the capital H horror of like small town America in that regard. Terry's actions throughout have shone a light on it, but have not meaningfully banished that horror, the systemic kind of broader one.
Yeah. I mean, the fact is they can't, they're such a small town that they can only afford a certain level of judiciary, and they're exploiting that level of judiciary, that they can only do misdemeanors, and that means that they can hold people for a certain amount of time without bail or trial and all those kind of things. Like, it was in both my watches, the bit where they are talking to the judge was actually the bit where it dipped for me, where they were like trying to open up the conspiracy a bit more broadly beyond these individual cops being cunts.
It didn't dip for me for that reason. It's that whole logic of, oh, trials are really expensive. It's just going to be easier if everyone that's guilty is just, I was going to say exported. He's like sent to a foreign country. That will just make it all a bit easier. It's that kind of similar logic.
To timestamp this podcast recording, we just had a very expensive trial of mushroom murdering lady, and we don't yet know what the verdict is.
Very prejudiced terminology there, mushroom murdering.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
She fucking did it.
Defamation on draft 0. You heard it here first.
I mean, I also think she's going to be found not guilty because it's really hard to prove someone guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I think she's going to successfully get away with murdering 3 people.
Oh, murder or manslaughter? That's always the question.
Poisoning is not manslaughter. That has intent.
It's a little oopsie. It's mushrooms.
Yeah, Chaz. Just don't cook me beef Wellington, please.
Please cook me beef Wellington.
So to wrap this up, I think that discussion before we go to meeting the parents, which I also think is going to bring some new things. I think part of the way it's able to structure itself is having a good, strong mystery to solve that slowly escalates, and that does have power. Picking an antagonist that is kind of personified in a character like Chief Sandy, but the actual horror is the larger systemic thing that allows the police force to be corrupt. And they are, this is why corrupt cops are such great villains in fiction, is because they have access to so much power. Right. And they've got that power in there, and you can kind of see it, the Omens in a lot of particular ways. But I do think it is really interesting for me flipping it around and looking at films like this where you want your hero to have this sense of power. And I wouldn't be surprised, if Taken has this level of, there is tombs for Taken, right? Obviously they transgress by taking his daughter, but the Omens where he shows it and all that kind of stuff. I do think these kinds of action films may have that, right? And I do think there is a connection to horror and action films for that reason. It's about really huge forces, and I made my joke about those Cannon films, but they absolutely do have that. I don't think it's very good, but Avenging Force, which is like 1985, is about a black man standing for mayor, and a group of people in a conspiracy kill him for having the audacity to be a black man standing for mayor, but they actually fuck up and kill his child, his 8-year-old child. And then it kind of escalates for there, and then he ends up being killed anyway, and it's got the white savior, annoying. But it actually ends with them going, there's 5 members of this secret society trying to, but I've only killed 4. And he looks at the head of the CIA unit. He's like, I wonder who the 5th is. And then you just they have this moment and he walks away, and it's got Slumber, which is like the horror of that film, is that kind of thinking is pervasive in American it's literally institutionalized, and each of the villains, this is a shitty Z-grade action movie, but they're kind of all connected to different parts of American institutions, and that's what gives it this sense of overwhelming power.
Before we move on to meet the parents, I realized why the beat of Summer getting drugged again doesn't hit for me. And I realized that it's like Jeremy Saulnier does such a good job of like ramping up, escalating the level of and like degree of depravity that the cops in particular are like capable of. Like this, the Omens into manifestation is like, oh shit, this is how deep it goes. This is how like bad it gets. And the moment where they walk into a woman's house, drug her, she awakes and realizes what's happened, calls the police, realizes they're the ones who did it, is so impactful that like for them to just do it again, but give her a bit more of the drug in the back of a car feels like a de-escalation rather than like a deepening of that depravity.
Yeah.
Plus, it's I guess a repeat beat.
Yeah, as you say, it makes her it's literally depriving her of agency.
Yeah.
Until she gets the moment where the guy that she's able to push the guy that drugged her.
which felt a little cheap to me, but yeah.
Still enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it couldn't have been better, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I'm like, I agree. I kind of can forgive it because, oh man, to be honest, it is a great horror sequence when she wakes up and the guy's creeping around.
Totally.
Great, pure horror. It could be Saw, right?
It's that sense that, the power extends so deeply, it's so pervasive, and the corruption is so pervasive that they seem to have total impunity if it were not for Terry taking justice into his own hands.
Speaking of taking justice into his meet the parents.
Meet the parents.
Pam is the one Greg wants to marry.
Just relax, honey. I love you.
But before he can pop the question, he'll have to meet
Hi, Daddy.
the parents.
What are you driving there, Ford?
Oh, yeah.
It's an interesting color. You pick it?
Oh, no, the Hertz guy picked it. Why?
Well, they say geniuses pick green. But you didn't pick it.
Be nice to this one, okay?
Okay, I'll try.
Now he will enter their home.
You know, Greg's in medicine too, Larry.
Oh, really? What field? Nursing.
Not a lot of men in your profession, are there, Greg?
And earn his way.
You want to hear a story? I milked a cat once.
A cat?
Into the family.
You know, just...
I had no idea you could milk a cat.
Oh, yeah, you can milk anything with nipples.
I have nipples, Greg. Could you milk me?
Dad.
At least that was the plan.
Hey, it's Greg Davis.
I just feel like this is not going well at all.
We're getting creative, people.
Oh, Florence Nightingale over here and play a little defense.
I don't know what it is, but there's just something about him that's a little off.
It's an antique polygraph machine.
Why don't you try that on?
That's okay.
Oh, come on. We'll have some fun.
Greg, my father was never in the rare flower business.
Don't worry. You'll enjoy this. Have you ever watched pornographic videos?
No.
Relax. The needles are jumping.
He was in the CIA for 34 years.
Great. Yeah, I was scared of your dad back when I thought he was a florist.
I'm a patient man. That's what 19 months in a Vietnamese prison camp will do to you. But I will be watching you, studying your every move. And I will bring you down, baby. I will bring you down to Chinatown.
It really feels like a gear shift.
No, but it's so good. I was really glad that our patrons voted comedy.
Yeah, great.
Because I really wanted to, like, the overlap between horror and thriller. I think they're from an analytical conceptual purpose, they're almost identical. You're just wanting the audience to feel different things. Like what you're putting the protagonist or the characters through is often very similar. It's just, do you want the audience to feel like thrilled or exhilarated, or do you want them to feel like repulsed and scared?
I found myself writing a horror and a farce play, and I was struck by how similar they were.
Oh, yeah.
That like no one in a farce is having fun.
No.
And in fact, you're being incredibly cruel to them. It's just that like rather than being positioned from the perspective of the people trapped in the saw trap or whatever it is, like horror I think is unique in genres that you like the audience feels the same thing the characters are feeling. It's like mirrored as opposed to laughing at them, and there's that kind of difference in affectation.
Which is why I find cringe comedy so hard.
Yeah. Totally.
I can handle people being brutally murdered, but an awkward social situation, I'm like, I have to pause this and recover emotionally, because
the way Ben Stiller kisses his future mother-in-law the first time, it's like, you just want to die.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was really, when I was thinking about tombs and how tombs might be applied to genres outside of horrors and thrillers, I was really keen to dig into a comedy that still like uses that structure. yeah, I guess a real quick recap is Ben Stiller plays Greg Fokker, who has the audacity to be a gentle and kind male nurse, also Jewish, and his transgression is being down bad for his girlfriend, Pam. He wants to propose to Pam. She's the one for him. He's so in love with her, but he learns that not only is Pam's sister just getting engaged, that Pam's sister's fiance did it the right way, quote unquote, and asked her father's permission. Very kind of traditional father. So he thinks, okay, I'm going to hold off proposing to Pam, and I'm going to go up for the weekend with Pam to see her parents for the first time, ask her father's permission, and do it the right way. But Greg is kind of almost like cosmically cursed, and everything that could go wrong does go wrong. He makes a complete ass of himself like multiple times in front of Robert De Niro, who plays Jack, the father, and it doesn't help that Jack just hates his guts. No one has ever been good enough for Pam, and the cherry on top, the kind of manifestation moment is Jack was in the CIA for 34 years, and as a criminal profiler or something. And so he's like a human lie detector, and he's on to Greg. And so, yeah, it's just this like one disaster after another that gets to the point where the entire family, including Pam, have turned against Greg. But when Greg tries to fly back home, Jack has a change of heart, which we can talk about. They have a classic kind of interrogation scene, and then Jack kind of proposes to Greg of, will you be my son-in-law, giving him his blessing.
Because I actually quite like that beat, because it's such an inversion. Instead of the lover running to the airport to meet the person that they've sent away, it's actually the future father-in-law doing it. So they kind of playing with the trope, and so they have to kind of end it with the, will you be my son-in-law?
Yeah.
Okay. My controversial opinion to start with is I actually think the transgression is when Greg lies in terms of the immediate effect of why he awakens the horror, right? And the moral lesson of this film, because I think this film is actually, even though we're doing it last, it's actually really the most clear in all of them. I agree that it is connected. He has the audacity to be, all that stuff is thematically important, but the one that kind of drives a lot of the comedy is he instinctively lies to impress his future father-in-law about the car, and then not liking the cat.
Jake's is strictly a house cat. You can't let him outside because he also lacks outdoor survival skills. That's just one of those things, isn't it, sweetheart?
I don't think Greg will be playing with Jinxie too much. He hates cats.
Pam, I don't hate cats. I don't hate cats. I just happen to be more of a dog lover. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, it's okay if you hate cats, Greg.
No, I don't. I don't hate cats at all.
That's okay. Just be honest about it.
Most of the comedy comes from the fact that he is so desperate to impress, he can't be himself.
Yeah.
And I actually go, it's interesting. I mean, they do mock him for being a male nurse a bit, but there's this, like, Robert De Niro gives a great performance in this. There's layers to that. Like, there's part of it where he's like, he's a male nurse, but you can kind of, like, when he's kind of snaps into being really strong about it, he seems to have a little bit more respect. For it.
Jack doesn't laugh at Greg when it's revealed that Greg's birth name is Gaylord.
No.
And he also has like a beat that I really forgot is when they first sit down to dinner, Jack reads out a poem that he's written about his deceased mum, and he cried.
I'm still not happy with it. As soon as it's ready, then I am going to glaze it onto a plate and put it next to the urn.
Nice. It's very special.
My Mother by Jack Burns. You gave me life. You gave me milk. You gave me courage. Your name was Angela, the angel from heaven. But you were also an angel of God. And he needed you too. Selfishly, I tried to keep you here while the cancer ate away your organs like an unstoppable rebel force. But I couldn't save you, and I shall see your face nevermore, 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 until we meet in heaven.
Daddy, that's beautiful.
I think I went into the film expecting it to be like the transgressions are all around toxic masculinity and like kind of expectations of men. And I think that's all there. But I think you're right, Stu, that narratively it's like a man who lies because he's so desperate to appease and kind of impress his parents or future parents-in-law, and a human lie detector being your father-in-law.
But Stu, I couldn't agree with you more because, like I said earlier, I was surprised at how late Jack's being a human lie detector is revealed. So all the tension in the first act is without the audience, if they're watching it for the first time, knowing that Jack knows that Greg is lying to him, right? We are just cringing because we know Greg is lying, and we can see Greg is making things worse for himself than if he would just have the confidence in himself to just be himself unapologetically.
Which we know he's capable of, because I think in the era, like the whole thing about him being a male nurse is he's actually confident in that decision.
You know, Greg's in medicine too, Larry.
Oh, really? Yeah. What field?
Nursing.
That's good. No, really. What field?
Nursing.
Hey, why don't I get you a chair, Greg?
Thank you. Thanks.
So, you didn't want to go for the MD?
No, I actually thought about becoming a doctor, but I decided it wasn't for me. Oh, thanks.
Just as well. Boards are killer.
Actually, Greg aced his MCAT.
You serious? No, I did okay.
Oh, he did more than okay, trust me.
Why did you take the test if you weren't planning on going to med school?
Well, I wanted to keep my options open, but in the end, nursing was just a better fit for me. It gives you the freedom to work in several different areas of medicine. Plus, I can focus 100% on patient care as opposed to being a doctor where you have to deal with the bureaucracy of...
Oh, wasn't your friend Andy supposed to be here by now?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that turns Jack around is that Greg had the choice to be a doctor and chose not to. Like, it wasn't that he couldn't become a doctor, couldn't afford to become a doctor, wasn't smart enough or anything like that. He actively chose to be a nurse over being a doctor. And it's learning that ultimately persuades, I think, well, it ties in with Jack's moment of choosing to go running after him.
Coming back to the CIA thing, you say it's late. I'm scanning through it. It's basically at 38 minutes. So
yeah, it's the first act turning point.
Yeah, it's a late turning point. The inciting incident is the transgression. So I do think this one more is probably more aligns with turning points because it's that era, right? We've got a good hook. We go into it. We've got the inciting incident is meeting the parents. Is it? Yeah.
I mean, to me, the actual full manifestation is when they're having their suits fitted and Jack's like, convinced that he's smoking pot, and he says to Greg,
I'm watching you and I'll take you down. Yeah.
And that's the full manifestation of evil. But the whole first act is sustained purely by Greg's like getting caught on escalating lie after escalating lie. There's the lie about the car, there's the lie about growing up on a farm, there's the lie about milking cats. I mean, it's wonderful. And that is all Greg. And Kim, you said Greg was cosmically unlucky, but I've actually written out in the manifestation all the things that happen to Greg that go wrong, like the escalation of the shit that goes wrong is actually all directly caused by Greg's choices.
Tied to, yeah.
If I can give some examples, right? It's not revealed at the time, it's revealed in the post-credit sting. But Greg flushes the toilet that he's been told not to flush, that floods the septic tank and floods where the wedding is going to be with shit.
Nice stench. You're really on a roll there, bud.
Bite me, Denny. Now you listen to me. In 20 hours, I'm having a wedding here, so I need my cesspool pumped now. Not tomorrow, now.
Dad, what's going on? Oh my God.
What's that smell? That smell, Bob, is our shit. Fokker flushed the toilet in the den, so the septic tank is overflowing.
Jack, I told you it wasn't me. It was Jinx.
Fokker, I'm not gonna tell you again. Jinx cannot flush the toilet. He's a cat, for Christ's sakes.
The animal doesn't even have thumbs, Fokker.
Right? Greg does that. And then he lies about not doing that. It's only revealed later that he was lying, but it is in line with his character. Greg, on the phone to the airport, lets the cat out, right? Ushers him out. He chose to do that. Greg tries to get the cat back in, climbing up onto the roof, where he decides to smoke a cigarette, which he then tosses away casually, setting on fire the gutter, which he then kicks, which then breaks the power cord, which sets the altar on fire. Greg, while he is being pushed by Jack's view of him at the water volleyball game, like Greg is trying to impress Jack by playing aggressively.
Here's what we gotta do. We're getting cream, people.
Oh, Florence Nightingale over here play a little defense.
Larry, I missed one shot.
That was a big shot.
Bob, keep floating where you are. You're doing great. Right. Denny, take the deep shots. Okay. Greg, nobody's expecting much out of you, so if I set you up with the ball, you think you can jump up and spike it?
No. Yeah, I'd have to be pretty high, but yeah.
I bet you would, Panama Red.
But it's still Greg who spikes the ball into the bride's face. So all these things that go wrong are arising out of Greg's inability to just be like comfortable in his own skin.
Yeah.
So here's my interesting question that prompted, and Kim, while you're doing the thinking face, this gives you time to think. You can slumber for a little bit. When we went into this, we were like, Jack is the monster, right? But what is Jack's power, right? Like, what is the extent of his power? I think, we saw Rennick's power, and then ultimately Rennick not only can fly and convert people, he kind of builds a whole army. The corruption of the police force is systemic, and they can follow you and break into it. What power does Jack have other than being a human lie detector, and how does it escalate? I actually think this may be one of those horror movies. If you were to rewrite this as a horror movie, it's like a Jekyll and Hyde kind of story. The monster is actually Greg's kind of lack of confidence. The omens are that escalating. The manifestation of it is it's all kind of a little bit more internal. Because the midpoint, not saying the midpoint should be the manifestation, but it is the point when we see the chestburster, it's meeting the Owen Wilson character, the ex-boyfriend who's really rich, all the things.
Yeah.
It's all Greg's insecurities.
Handle an afternoon with your ex-fiance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Now, for the floor that you're walking on, I chose this Bolivian wormwood. I think works well in here. I have the Viking range here and the twin sub-Zs. Yeah, they open up right there.
Oh, I get it. Like hidden.
Yeah, kind of blend in.
Great.
Are you a homeowner, Greg?
No. I rent.
Oh.
So, things are going real well for you, aren't they, at Newburgh, eh, Kevo?
Gosh, things have been going so great lately. Yeah, I got in early on some wireless IPOs, and the stuff just skyrocketed from there.
Wow.
What about you, Greg? What line of work are you in?
I'm in healthcare.
Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. There are a lot of Benjamins to be made right now with the biotech stuff. Yeah, I don't have to tell you that. How's your portfolio?
I'd say strong to quite strong.
That said, I think the mystery to be solved, what he's trying to solve here, is how do I win over Jack?
Yeah.
And that's banish this insecurity, right?
I mean, you ask what power Jack has. Jack has the power of approval over Pam that, like, when we first meet Jack, they go to great lengths to show how much Pam loves and worships her dad, and they have that very sickeningly cutesy greeting. And so Greg is aware that Jack holds that power, the power to the one thing that he wants, on top of being a conservative human lie detector.
Yeah, it's just interesting because, as you say, these are Greg's choices trying to win over Jack. It's just curious that Jack isn't pushing, like, how much is this Jack's doing versus Greg's insecurity?
In reading, and like, I went on Reddit to kind of look at like people's takes on this as well, and there was one really popular post that was saying that Pam set Greg up at every point to fail. That, like, I don't disagree with anything you said, Chaz. Like, it is like the active like an accident, but then the active decision to try and cover it up, that just gets him in deeper and deeper shit. But also, like, in the very first meeting with your boyfriend and your parents, to say that your boyfriend doesn't like cats when it's like when your dad's pet is the most cat is the most treasured thing. It is like kind of creating like unnecessary drama that Greg then stumbles into.
I mean, at the very beginning, Pam tells him not to lie about them living together.
Oh, and we're not living together.
I thought you said you told them.
Well,
and she knows that he's a lie detector test.
Yeah.
She says to lie, not to not lie. She says to lie.
Yeah, that's what that's what I meant. That, you know, in terms of Kim's point that Pam's setting him up, she knows her father's a human lie detector test. 5 seconds before she meets him, is like, lie to him.
Yeah. It's wild. I don't think ultimately I agree with that reading, but what I find fascinating about the like banishment beat in this is, like, as we discussed earlier, Greg is the one who's banished. He's literally like sent off to the airport and kind of like symbolically banished from the family. And it's really unclear whether Greg and Pam are going to make it through this. But then it's the two women, Jack's wife and daughter, who, like, Pam says, you know, I love you, Dad, but you can be a real asshole sometimes. And Dina says, you only liked, you know, Owen Wilson, Pam's ex, once it was clear they weren't going to get back together, once they've broken up. No one's ever been good enough for Pam in your eyes. And if you've basically kind of like ruined this relationship for her, and you're going to keep doing that. And that's the kind of, like, I guess, like, what I'm arguing for is that both men, both Greg and Jack, have some kind of demon to banish in themselves.
Oh, absolutely. I was going to say, I feel Jack more successfully banishes it. Like, I don't feel that Greg has overcome his self-esteem and feels truly of value at the end.
I mean, the fact that there's a fourth or fifth movie coming along is like, oh God, there's more anxiety to excavate.
So it's just to tap onto your banishment thing, Kim. Obviously, I'm like, yeah, okay, it's pretty obvious that the banishment is him being sent to the airport. But when I was watching it, and I was like thinking through this save, like, he clearly he's trying to survive the weekend and save his relationship, and what he's trying to solve is, what do I need to do to appease the monster?
Yeah.
And that, the conclusion he comes to, is rescue the cat.
Yeah.
And so I think that is an attempt to banish the monster, is to rescue the cat and lie for it. Because for those who haven't seen it for a while, GC, same name as Chaz's dog. Clearly that was an homage, Chaz.
You just love Meet the Parents. Yeah.
Yeah. Jinxie is let out, and he sees a Himalayan cat that looks very similar at the pound, and is like, I'm going to get this. Right.
And spray paint its tail.
Rough.
So I can be the hero, and it's played as a reveal that he's found the cat, decided to do this cat, and then he keeps on looking for it, right? And then the ruse is discovered. And what's cool about it is that it is actually the inversion of the low point. I interpreted that as in this terminology that, like, oh, he's got the solve. He's worked out how to banish the monster, but it fails. It's you can't actually banish the ghost. I think Woman in Black kind of does the similar thing, that you think they've solved the Woman in Black, but no, she's back, right? And to me, that's how I interpreted it, that he's trying to appease Jack. But as I said, I think what as I came to the conclusion, I'm like, I'm not even sure that Jack is the antagonist any more than it is his insecurity.
Absolutely. I think they're both antagonists. It's just one force follows Toombs perhaps a bit more than the other. Like, there are omens. Jack's got those creepy nanny cams, surveillance cams all over the house, and is interrogating Greg at various points about his drug habits and things like that.
The whole drug thing?
No, I don't know. Why don't you tell me?
Some people think that to puff the magic dragon means they're really to smoke marijuana cigarette.
Well, Puff's just the name of the boy's magical dragon.
Right.
Are you a pothead, Fokker?
No. What? No, Jack. No, I'm not. I pass on grass all the time. I mean, not all the time.
Yes or no, Greg?
No. Yes. No.
So there's definitely some omens in that first section before it's revealed that he is a human lie detector. And then
there's also kind of like red herring omens that I forgot about this whole thread, but it's like when we see, and actually not from Greg's point of view, like Robert De Niro pour some cocktail mix down the sink and then lie to the family that they're out of that cocktail mix so that he can go to the shop. He then doesn't buy that cocktail mix. Greg catches him out on that and sees him talking to some skeezy guy in the car park. And it all has a very innocuous revelation that it's about Pam's sister and brother-in-law, money for a vacation for them. But it feels like that's going to be some CIA spy stuff to both Greg and us. And I quite liked I guess it suits the kind of comedy of it all, that it feels like it's almost going to be a different genre of movie. And then it's like, nope, yoink. It's still a comedy, guys. It's
a family comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, definitely they Greg is an antagonist to Jack. He's coming to not only to take his Pam away, but is systematically destroying his house one piece at a time. And Jack is an antagonist to Greg in that he holds Pam's heart, and Pam ultimately learns to choose Greg against her father's approval. Like, she calls Greg trying to reunite with him, even though Greg's been tried to banish Jack, and ultimately, as you say, Stu, has ended up banished. Jack, if you look at the story as Jack being the protagonist, he has successfully banished Greg at that point. But I would, Kim, you had this amazing observation about like the portrayals of masculinity. Owen Wilson is another manifestation of Greg's insecurity.
Yeah.
And it's because Pam continually refers to just their sexual chemistry that she had with Owen Wilson. But Owen Wilson is not like a buff guy. He's not, I don't know, some people may find him pretty. I wouldn't even say he's a pretty boy, but he's not like, he's woodworking and he's gentle and like
you're already saying that because he's in a very nice knit.
Yes, exactly. But
he does
to Kim's
talk about
point,
stocks, and it's weird that he has all these photos of Pam like framed around his house. But he is like, surprisingly, I really thought they were going to do some reveal that he's actually a piece of shit. And Pam realizes that, and they don't. I think it's way more sophisticated.
And in fact, they have a moment where they feel sorry for Kevin.
Oh, poor Kevin looks lonely. Maybe I should ask him to dance. What do you think?
Sure. Bet he could whittle a private little dance floor for the two of you. I'm serious. I saw some beechwood outside. It's very handy. It's an extremely handy and crafty craftsman. I shouldn't paint him with that brush, but come on, seriously, part of you wishes you ended up with him.
Yes, he's very talented, but it would have never worked out.
Why not?
I was never in love with Kevin.
So I think all of these things Jack and Kevin and all the shit that goes wrong, it all, to my mind, ties more uniformly back to the source of antagonism being Greg's self-esteem and need to please and impress Jack, and not feeling that he can do that by being himself. I think everything in the film kind of leads back and reinforces that. And in that way, it's more simple than Rebel Ridge or Sinners, that has clear contrasting and conflicting sources of antagonism. This has multiple sources of antagonism, but they're all aligned in what they're trying to do.
And interestingly, coming back to the solve thing, just using that as a tool to think about these things, he's trying to solve the wrong problem, right? Like, what he is trying to do, or at least he's trying to solve using the wrong tactic, which is like, how do I win over it? My solution is to try and lie to him and rescue the cat. And all he needed to do was kind of be honest, right? And it's only when and that's why I think the interrogation scene works so well, is because once he starts being honest, you can kind of feel that you can kind of see it in Ben Stiller's performance. He seems more relaxed. You can see him and Jack kind of get a respect for each other.
Listen, Fokker, I'm not going to tell anybody anything until you answer some questions. Unless you want to spend the next couple of years of your life in prison, you better goddamn well tell me the truth. No more lies, you understand? No more lies.
Did you do this?
Just answer the question.
Did you have me taken off of that airplane?
Just answer the question. Put your hands over there. That's it.
You're sick, you know that?
Is your name Gaylord Fokker, yes or no?
Yes.
Are you a male nurse?
Yes.
Are you a pothead?
No.
Have you ever smoked pot?
Yes.
Did you spray paint the tail of a cat to pass him off as Mr. Jinx?
Yes.
And did you do that because you desperately were seeking my approval?
Yes.
Because you love my daughter Pam?
Yes.
Do you want to marry her? Do you want to marry her?
I did. Till I met you.
Yeah, it's like what they're saying is there's never been more conflict between them. He says like I love Pam and I wanted to marry her until I met you. Like that's such a slap in the face. But it's like the truth really pierces through because it's been lying the whole movie. And it's actually like the most intimate the two men have been emotionally and physically.
Yeah, I mean, they're literally he's holding his wrists.
It's really weirdly beautiful.
Yeah. This film is way better than I remembered it being. I don't remember it being bad, but I remembered it feeling tropey. And almost 20 years later, it actually doesn't feel tropey at all.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised at how kind of like subversive it is in certain ways. Like Robert De Niro loving his cat and crying over his mum and, touching Greg's wrists in this really like, in a way that like a really shitty comedy could have like ramped up as homoerotic or something. It just isn't. What I realized as well in terms of this masculinity stuff, like I was thinking about the song that starts the movie. It's the Randy Newman song. And the lyrics are like, show me a man who's gentle and kind and I'll show you a loser. And then what is it? Now show me a man who takes what he wants. Ooh, how exciting. But I realized that like songs play a big part in all three movies. That at the beginning of Rebel Ridge, the song that he's listening to, the lyrics are like, 'cause in my dreams it's always there, the evil face that twists my mind and brings me to despair. And that is like this kind of Tombs-esque omnipresent evil. And then in Sinners, the like song that Sammy writes is like, I lied to you. Like that's his sin defying his papa. The truth hurts, so I lied to you.
That song from Rebel Ridge's Iron Maiden's The Number of the Beast.
Yeah, totally.
So it's like...
It's I think they like chose it extremely well.
Also, Iron Maiden is great to exercise too, those pumping 16s. But yeah, you're right. Music is really important. I'm not saying that we should use music, but it does connect to the Omens stuff and the energy and
definitely.
the transcendental kind of moments.
Yeah, particularly when it's like, I know in Rebel Ridge it's diegetic, but like I guess it kind of functions in a non-diegetic way as well. We kind of realize that it's diegetic. But yeah, this sense that like it's a signal for the audience, but not necessarily for the characters. It's functioning that way.
Now, keeping us on Meet the Parents, I'm coming back to the structural stuff because that's kind of the things that we've been looking at.
Yeah.
So seeing the transgression or the beginning of the transgression sequence, I'm breaking it down in real time. I could be wrong. Is like him beginning to lie. What are we seeing? If we are arguing, and the thing is, it doesn't have to be precise. This is just tools. But it's like if I'm a comedy writer interested in applying tombs to my work and I want to use it, we got the fractal thing from Rebel Ridge, right? We've got the tombs from the A and the B plot line in Sinners, right? There's two forms of transgressions and the way they intersect. And what we're looking at here, that Meet the Parents, the tombs is kind of connected for the character flaw, right?
Totally.
The transgression is, because clearly at the beginning of the film, he does think he's worthy. Well, actually, does he think he is worthy of Pam?
Yeah. I was going to say, I think the very first transgression is him choosing not to propose when he hears that the right thing to do is seek the father's approval. Like, the Greg at the end of the movie doesn't need Jack's approval anymore. And at the beginning of the film, if he'd just said, I love you, I'm worthy of you, I will impress your father, please marry me, then none of the rest of it would have played out because he would have seen himself as worthy of her and not needing her father's approval. I'm not saying it's the right way to go. I'm not saying like it might have been a dick move if it was really important to her for him to go and talk to Jack. So I'm not saying right or wrong, but in terms of the sources of antagonism, I think the first transgression is him bailing out of the proposal, the elaborate proposal.
I really like that reading because I think like throughout the movie, when he starts explaining to the table of Pam's family why he chose nursing, he's got this really reasoned, intelligent explanation and they're just not listening to him. Like there's nothing wrong with him. And actually a lot of, he gets a pot plant for Jack as a gift and it's this rare orchid because he thinks Jack's a florist. What a lovely, thoughtful gift. Like he's actually like there's nothing quote unquote wrong with him except for this fatal flaw of that, he feels the need to lie because he doesn't believe he's worthy.
So where do we think, if we even think it matters, the transition from omens to manifestations come from? If we using weirdly Alien, omens are all the creepy shit on the shit, the face hugger, the quarantine, and then the transition is when the omens stop, when the chest burster appears, and then that creates the manifestations from as the baby's interforce grows into the full xenomorph, and then the banishment sequences trying to kill it, realizing we just got to bail. Where do we see those kind of omens grow and how they connect to it? Like, how do I use this to help build the antagonism so it feels like it's getting bigger and bigger? Is there any, does this even help us here?
I don't know if I would be able to if this is a retrospective tool or if it would actually help me generate. But I actually think as soon as he arrives at the house, that is the omen start. As soon as he meets Jack, like Jack challenges him about the color of the car. He's doesn't know the plant at all. Like that's an omen of what's happening, that he's failed to be impressed despite Greg going to these great lengths. There's like I mentioned, the nanny cam omen. And then I think there's also the omens of them asking Greg to say grace, even though he's Jewish. Like they are testing him and putting him under pressure. Now he's reacting to that poorly, but they are doing those things.
I think the poor reaction is key here. I think cringe comedy trades on us having a better knowledge of social cues and social mores than the protagonist in this situation. That like in so many of these instances, at least we'd like to think we'd handle it better. That like it's not necessarily an easy situation he's being thrown into, but like he doesn't have to talk about milking a cat's teats at the dinner table. Like that there are all of these things that could easily have been avoided if he just played by social rules. And so I think a lot of these Omens beat to beat, like if we're kind of trying to apply it to comedy, is like what the like ha-ha moments are ruptures and like, you know, moments where Greg's behavior deviates from what we think would be like this day going smoothly.
So the Omens would be whatever in terms of building escalation. It's like, how will the omens of what's to come, of the manifestation of Jack, how are they going to prompt, even at this early stage before he's manifested, prompt Greg's poor reactions? I mean, the sequence where I had forgotten that the lie detector sequence in the hidden room, that at that point, Greg still doesn't know that Jack works for the CIA. At that point in time, he still thinks he's a florist who just has a creepy hidden room and a lie detector test. I mean, there's the photos of him with Clinton and other stuff. So, but he still hasn't been told that Jack is a CIA spy at that point, which I'd forgotten. I thought he was across it by that point in my memory.
I'll wrap this up because this is kind of moving us into wrap up stage. But I am suddenly like, even though I argued that the rescuing the cat is kind of the banishment, if we are thinking about this as about his insecurity, that is the ultimate manifestation of his insecurity. Right? Is him taking a cat and painting its tail and trying to pass it off.
You spray painted his tail to make him look like Jinxie, didn't you, fucker?
Greg, what's he talking about?
Hank McAtee called me a couple of hours ago and told me he found Jinxie. He took his collar and put it on an imposter. Then he spray painted his tail, and then he tried to beat us back here so that he could get rid of the evidence.
Oh, no. Please tell me that's not true, Greg.
It was just a temporary solution until I could find the real Jinx.
How could you do something like that?
I'm sorry.
Now, what are you going to tell me next? That you set Kevin's altar on fire? Oh, my God.
Well, it wasn't intentional. I was chasing Jinx up onto the roof. I had a smoke, and I think I might have lit something that... I don't know what happened. He put so much goddamn lacquer on that thing. It was an accident waiting to happen.
This is very disappointing, Greg.
Get out of my house, fucker, and take your friend with you.
So you lied to me about everything, huh, Greg? You lied about the cat, about the fire, about the M-Cats.
Didn't lie about the M-Cats. Come on, Pam. Don't you see what's happening here? Your dad has totally turned you against me.
I didn't turn her against you, Greg. You did that to yourself.
To me, that's still him being reactive to Jack's rules, to Jack's like law, I guess, you know, that he's still desperately, like he's playing tactics and he becomes more forthright instead of just like accepting these embarrassing trunks to play volleyball in or whatever, netball.
I forgot how cut Ben Stiller was.
Yeah, it's like with that body, I wouldn't be worried. But yeah, like that. The car chase home is still like a desperate attempt to cover up. It's still like, to me, that's him surviving the monster, like attempting to survive, and solve, but not progressing to that banishment phase.
I know. I just I actually think this film in the manifestation sequence, what it does so well, I think, is I've already laid out all the beats of the escalation of things going horribly wrong, but it is all prompted by Greg making a bad decision based on his insecurity.
What do you see then as the manifestation sequence?
I would say, I think, you know, Kim and I mentioned it before. I think it's the point when they're in the suit fitting.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, he goes to the suit fitting and then he meets Kevin, Owen Wilson's character. And so that's the
Pam also hasn't told him about the best man, going back to your Reddit set.
Oh, yeah,
Reddit's right.
I mean, it's one of those things. There was a Letterboxd review which was like, these people are all really fucking horrible to Greg. And I'm like, this is true.
It's not untrue, yeah.
And then someone else was like, Greg has done a lot of dumb shit that...
Yeah. Both things can be true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they could have... The film would not have happened if they were not horrible to him, or if he were to have loved himself more and not reacted poorly to being treated poorly.
So to keep us in the mothership sci-fi horror thing, it's like this binary star that's kind of being pulled into each other, which is you've got the Jack as the monster, right? And there's TOMBS for that. But there's also Greg's insecurity is also a monster. And you've got those two scenes work so well back to back because it's Jack literally standing over him going, I've got my eyes on you. And then we meet Kevin, who is the literal manifestation of Jack's insecurity because he kind of has got all this wealth and power and photos of Kim and they've got this secret love language and all that stuff. And so maybe that's part of the juice of this story is it is also running A and B plot lines through this twin source of antagonism here. And that's why that's why I'm struggling to unpick it because they actually just work so well together. I mean, this film is actually a remake. I didn't even know that until I read about it.
Yeah. Wow.
It's a remake of some indie film that no one really saw.
But from like 6 years prior. Like it's
oh, wow.
It's a Moana animated to Moana thing. It's like an even faster turnaround. Yeah.
So as an end of the whole thing, we like to wrap up with key learnings. Kim, have you learned anything from this exercise?
I think that I really love this idea of you can kind of reverse tombs and like put yourself in the protagonist's point of view and what is the horror to them. Put yourself in the antagonist's point of view, what's the horror to them. And also I really love the idea of, I think my reading of Meet the Parents was very much like the horror is Jack and more generally toxic masculinity, but I really like on a narrative level, the lying and the lie detector being like the diametrically opposed forces is so much cleaner and more tangible. This notion of like imagining a flaw within your main character that they have to overcome as the horror that like awakens within them due to circumstance, like generates these omens, manifests in certain ways and needs to be banished. I won't speak at length about it, but I watched K-pop Demon Hunters recently, and the demons in that movie become a metaphor for the main character's shame, and actually one of the antagonists' shame as well. And whilst I thought that the lore and the emotional things weren't aligned particularly well in the final 10 minutes, they did a really good job of going like, these literal demons that we need to banish are like the embodiment of this shame that we need to like kind of purge from ourselves and move forward kind of confident. And yeah, I think that's really helpful.
Stu?
Yeah, we didn't go fully into depth the onset, discovery, confirmation, confrontation structure. I do think that's really useful as a tool that you can kind of almost use to check your work in a way.
Yeah.
Because I think it's audience experience, but I do think it applies to Meet the Parents, right? But you've kind of go from discovery to confirmation ends up being the second act. And we're looking for tools to help escalate the antagonism. And I think the ways that we started realizing that there was like fractal structures and that the A line and the B line follows this stuff helps solve that problem, right? I can see myself boarding a story, or perhaps us together, Chaz, and maybe us and you, Kim, like where you go tombs for this character, tombs for this character, tombs for this character.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't be surprised with Sinners if you start to think of, if we were to go even more in depth, you'd realize there's transgressions for each character that's kind of experienced by each character in different ways. And I think that's really useful. And I actually like it's like, even though I've been trying to push for precise, I like the imprecision.
Yeah.
Because it's just ways of going, oh, I need some scenes that are like this, and this is how they evolve towards that, and maybe there's some lines, but I don't have to worry about the turning point being here. And I think turning points are useful, but I think sometimes also movements are useful. You know, sometimes it's great in a song to have a sudden drop into your middle eight, you know, the beat drops or whatever. You get a sudden chord change, but sometimes it's great to have a piece of music where you're like, holy shit, I'm in a completely different part of the song. How the hell did they do that? At what point did we transition? It doesn't matter. Maybe the composer knows, but maybe they don't. But we know that they're kind of in there. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons Sinners feels so sophisticated and also fresh to us is because it doesn't like prescribe, you know, so kind of militantly to these thresholds that we kind of often recognize.
And you, Chaz?
I think what I really loved about this is the real focus on sources of antagonism in your story. Because so often when I'm trying to break a story, I'm just thinking from the protagonists and sometimes from other characters' point of view. But I liked how this was, you know, it could overlap with that kind of structure or not, but it really is just going like, how are the sources of antagonism moving and escalating in this? And it is, I think, why these films have so much to say beyond, you know, being a good vampire movie or a good action movie or a good comedy. And it's because everything is so aligned from these opposing forces, you know, the thesis and antithesis or antithesis. We always get our pronunciation completely wrong. It's fine. So I really like that. And I've got, Stu knows, and I've referenced it in the past few episodes because it's on my mind, but I've got a chamber piece with 5 characters, but 3 main ones who are all each other's antagonists. And I think going through and just writing for each of them what Tombs is for them is actually going to really provide specificity for the actions of the other characters. Like it's going to make sure that everything feels like it's escalating for everyone in every single way.
But I would also suggest that you go down and go, what is something for them to survive? What is something for them to solve? And what is something for them to save? I actually think, even though we haven't fully gone into it, I think that's a really useful framework for actions, because as we saw in Sinners, that actually also helped drive action when it was going in a quiet period.
Totally.
Yeah. Go on, Kim?
Oh, you saying each, like multiple characters, not just 2 forces being each other's antagonists, made me think of that really famous Sartre play, No Exit, where it's essentially like, it's that famous phrase, hell is other people. You know, you've got 3 characters in a room, it's hell. Each of them is like perfectly chosen to be hell for another person in the triangle. And this like, you can have forces of antagonism that aren't like a dyad. You can have a triad.
Yeah,
you can have a force triad.
You can have a force dyad and a force triad.
And I'm going to tease it now. We've talked about it. If you are interested in Mothership, I'll put some links to some great actual play podcasts. But we may, as back matter, do an actual play of Mothership with Kim and Chaz and Mel and maybe someone else, because there is a module for Mothership. So it's a very hackable game. And one of the kind of hacks or frameworks that someone has imposed is that you play a camera crew contracted to record footage of the monster, right?
So good.
To show the evils of the corporation or whatever it is going on. And there's literally like, your goal is like a shot list and all this stuff. And there's something I'm like, if we're going to do this for fun, it's kind of cool to have a bunch of filmmakers making something that's effectively designed to make a found footage situation. So you create those moments of like, don't go in there with the camera, but I have to. I have to get the evidence of the monster attacking. Anyway, we'll see if it actually happens. I'm sure it will.
I'm extremely down for that.
I'm not editing that episode.
I will be like,
This 10-hour recording.
Yeah.
No, I've got one that should be like 4 hours. It would be like a couple of 2-hour sessions. But yeah, I'm going to be like adding in music and sound effects and all that stuff. There's this Australian guy called Not Without the Bugbear who does like graphic overlays for his like 3-hour recordings with maps and all that stuff. It's pretty.
Oh, damn.
The detail that people go into. Anyway, anything else?
Just as a flag, so we have also mulled a future episode. Kim has raised just Asian storytelling structures and
this particular idea that I can't pronounce.
Specifically called Kisho Tenketsu. It's a very, very common story, 4-act story structure in a lot of East Asian media. Kisho Tenketsu is like the Japanese term for it.
But I don't know, maybe we just do that as its own episode because it sounds amazing, but it also sounds quite niche in case people are like just wanting to make horror. What I've been dying to do.
It's not just about horror, right, Kim?
Okay.
No, not at all.
Oh, okay, sorry. Then great. Let's do that.
And it's like, it's maddening to me because it's like extremely, like, it's taught at, I believe, like a kind of primary or secondary level to like school kids in East Asia, but it's like barely known in the West. And I think it like has so many really exciting lessons.
But I would love to just, do something where we watch 3 famous non-Western, non-English language, like could it be Anatomy of a Fall and Triple R and I don't know, K-pop Demon.
Yeah.
For my own value as much as anyone else, is like there's so much dogma around this is how story is supposed to work. And I'm like,
yeah.
That is only in this one storytelling tradition that has a lot of money and prevalence and cultural cachet across the world. So it's not to diminish it, but we're shutting ourselves off from so much potential by not just being open to other cultural structures.
Yeah. Kim and I had a brief chat about this, like the cultural amnesia about like even Western storytelling. It was like Sid Field discovered the midpoint and it's like...
what the fuck? Yeah. Your point as well that like Kisho Tenketsu, one of the things is that in the midpoint there's this rupture and, Act 3 kind of departs and introduces new context. In Parasite, it's the like tunneling down and realizing there's a bunker underneath the thing. It's like, what the fuck? I'm watching a different movie. But Stu mentioned that like, the mid-act twist is like not uncommon in plays, like in Western plays. It's just like we've kind of lost that a little bit, in feature storytelling.
That's all.
Thank you so much, Kim. What a
Thank
delight!
You. Thanks so much for having me.
To meet you. Thank you for persevering through this
epic
3-hour recording. Definitely going to be 2 episodes. Thanks to our patrons who bring you more Draft Zero more often, in particular to Alexandra, Jen, Jesse, Crob, Lily, Malay, Paolo, Randy, Sandra, Thies, and Thomas. And thanks to you, Stu, for buying Mothership and bringing us all together.
Introducing tunes.
The only reason we're doing this podcast is so I could claim Mothership against tax. I mean, to be honest, I would actually claim TTRPG story materials anyway, but this makes it easier.
It's delightful. And those, that chart at the top of the Warden's Operation manual is like amazing. Of all the horrors, the potential transgressions, even just like prompts. If you're stuck, I feel like so many of those could be great writing exercises.
This is literally it's got a chart to let you randomly roll tombs. So it's got a column for transgressions that you roll for. You roll for omens, you roll for manifestation, you rolled for the banishment, like what is the rule, and then what is the slumber.
It's so good.
And then you roll for the theme of the story. It's like, to be honest, I would use this in a screenwriting class.
Yeah.
Like if I was teaching a horror workshop, we'd do a horror workshop and it's going to be like roll a number, roll a number, roll a number, roll a number. Now work as a writers group.
Let's build it. Yeah.
Let's try to see if you can come up with something about it. So you're not invested in coming up with that stuff. You're kind of focusing on breaking the story.
And there's no sense of like ownership for your, like for someone's idea. Like sometimes it can be awful if you're offering your own idea up for your classmates to
Mm-hmm.
like breathe on, but to just be like, we're rolling die to figure this out. Let's go. Totally.
I think that's what, not to spruik a podcast with much higher listenership than ours, but, John August's Writer Emergency cards is that just like pull a random card that gives a random prompt to just try and...
Which is inspired by Brian Eno's oblique strategies, if you've ever looked that up. Anyway, give me a random number, Chaz, and I will give you a theme.
32.
32 is
It's
Rust.
the age I am in my head.
Rust, the Machine, and Noise.
Hell yeah. Rust as a theme is just so like evocative. I'm like, hell yeah.
I hope you all feel like arguing with either Stu or myself
about anything on this episode or anything in general.
And you can find many ways of getting in touch with us at our website at draft-0.com.
At the website, you'll also find the show notes for this and all our other episodes,
as well as links to support us and spread the word for free via a rating and review on Apple Podcasts.
Very important for spreading the word.
Or if you think that what we do here is worth $1 or preferably more than $1, then you can also find links to our Patreon page to support us getting these episodes to you quicker. Thanks.
And thanks for listening.